Hi, I'm Susan Tanya from Empowered Women Faith Club. Thank you so much for watching this video. If this is your first time watching, please subscribe to our YouTube channel where you get all the updates about new videos when they become available. We are in week 5 of the Awaken series, and today we're going to be talking about responding to the voice of God. Now, last week we highlighted 3 things about positioning ourselves to hear from God. Number 1 was to create time, be intentional about carving out time to sit with God daily. Number 2 was to make room and space for God in our lives, to find a space where we can meet with God away from the noise and distractions and to hear Him in the silence. And number 3 is to have our spiritual radars up, waiting and expecting to hear from God. Our key verse for this week is out of John 10, verse 27. And the Good Word translation reads, "These are the words of Jesus. My sheep respond to my voice, and I know who they are, and they follow me." Now, it's one thing to hear God speak, but it's another thing to respond to what God is telling us to do. Because God doesn't speak just to be heard. God speaks to instruct, to lead, to guide us, and we ought to respond. But sometimes when we hear God speak, we don't know how to respond to what God is saying. So we do what most of us would do. We do nothing. I'm guilty of that, and I've done that so many times. But over the years, as I've grown in my relationship with the Lord and trusted His voice more, then I'm more likely to respond to the voice of God. So our relationship with God matters in how we respond to God. And no one's perfect. We're still growing in this area. I am still growing in this area on hearing the voice of God and responding. And we would always continue to grow in our relationship with the Lord, hearing from Him and responding to His voice. But an interesting quote by A.W. Tozier says that most Christians don't hear God's voice because we've already decided that we're not going to do what He says. That's quite interesting, but so true. And in the words of Henry Blackaby, he says, the willingness to obey every word from God is critical to hearing God speak. So if we are expecting to hear from God, then we ought to be ready to respond to what God is saying to us. I want to share a personal encounter that I had on the Moravian Falls Prayer Mountain. I've talked about the Moravian Falls Prayer Mountain in the last couple of videos. And I want to share an encounter that completely changed my life forever. It changed the view that I had of God, and I was completely blown away, completely awestruck at the extent that God would go just to get your attention. It was not a coincidence because the timing and the details of everything was so specific, and it couldn't have been planned by anyone else but God Himself. I was on a 2-day retreat on the Moravian Falls Prayer Mountain. I had been there now several times ever since I had a powerful experience in the presence of God there. And I decided to go for 2 days and kind of seek the face of God over guidance on some things that had weighed heavily on my heart. And on the second day of my time at the prayer mountain, I went up to the prayer mountain to spend some time in prayer. And I didn't expect the encounter that I had that day. I had a woman who had never known before walk up to me and basically tell me that the Lord had led her to come pray with me. I wasn't quite sure what to make of it. Obviously, in different circumstances, it wouldn't really matter. Maybe if I was in church, I wouldn't mind praying with someone I didn't know. But in this scenario, she was a Caucasian, mid-aged, blonde-haired woman, and I was standing on a hill surrounded by trees, and I certainly didn't know what to make of that. But I prayed quietly within myself, and I asked the Lord to lead us and how to pray in this awkward moment. She extended her hand, and we prayed together. As we began to pray, she began to cry almost uncontrollably. I didn't know what to do. So we continued to pray that God would give us the guidance and insight on how to pray for her. And as we prayed, suddenly the words that began to pour out of my mouth were certainly not my own. They were utterances that went on for several minutes, speaking over her until she eventually settled down. And then I asked her what her name was and where she had come from. And she said her name was Susan, and she had come from Kansas, Missouri. I was completely shocked. Wow, I thought God has a sense of humor. What are the odds that I would be praying with a complete stranger who drove 900 miles away, 14 hours away to meet with someone at the prayer mountain that she didn't even know. But we were so much alike than we thought. I was shocked. And little did I know that Susan had heard from the Lord a few days prior to making a trip to the Moravian Falls Prayer Mountain. The Lord had instructed Susan to come to the Moravian Falls Prayer Mountain for the first time. She had heard about it, but she had never been there because he was going to lead her to meet with someone. Susan didn't have a full scope of why and where or who God was leading her to speak to, but she trusted God because of her relationship with him. And she drove over 900 miles, 14 hours away from her home to meet with someone that she didn't even know. Wow, that's what I call radical obedience. That's exactly what I told Susan, because honestly, I don't know that I would have had the courage to do that. But Susan's relationship with God spoke volumes of how much she trusted his voice to obey him and to come in spite of not knowing what God was really leading her to do. And I prayed in that moment and I said, God, I wish I had the courage to do and to obey you the way Susan just did. And then Susan started to pray for me. And she prayed with a boldness and an authority that sent chills throughout my body. And she imparted to me the same thing that God had imparted to her. And she began to speak and declare things that I had heard God speak to me about. That's when I knew that God had sent a complete stranger over 900 miles away just to confirm the words that he had spoken to me. Just in case I still had some doubts about what he was revealing to me, God went out of his way to confirm it in ways that there was no way that I could question that this was only God alone. Now, I didn't know what to think in that moment. There are a few things in life that leave you speechless. This was definitely one of those moments for me. I couldn't wrap my mind around how God would connect two complete strangers who are different worlds apart, over 900 miles away, but who share the same name so that he would fulfill his purpose. But that's how awesome God is. And that's how amazing God is, to see the extent that God would go just to get our attention and to show us how much he cares and how much he loves us and how much he would go to find us when we search for him. With all our hearts, he will meet us and we will find him. Jeremiah 29 verse 13 says it this way: you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. Friend, if you are hungry to know God and to hear God speak to you, I pray that God will reveal himself to you in ways that no one can, so that you will be convinced beyond a shadow of doubt. Well, that's all for this week. Join us next week as we complete the last episode of our Awaken series. Listen, leave a comment below and tell us about your own encounters with God. We would love to know. Last but not least, you can connect with us on our website, empoweredwomenfaithclub.com, or on social media, Instagram or Facebook at Empowered Women Faith Club. Bye for now. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.